This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started, please. If you would, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. All members of the Planning Commission are present tonight. Just a reminder for Planning Commission members, when you do speak, remember to make sure your microphone is on. We need to adopt the agenda. Is there any change or any modification that anyone sees here?
Mr. Chairman, I want to point out that we have an addendum to the packet that's been distributed to all of the Planning Commission members and members of the board containing information that was put together after the publication of the packet.
Thank you, sir.
For a particular case.
Yeah, let's say for the Madison Wood Preservers case as well as the Yates site plan.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, we need to adopt the minutes from the September 18th meeting. Does anybody see anything that needs to be corrected or changed on that?
Make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on that? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. So the minutes for September 18th have been adopted. Tonight we have two cases. As always, we will basically read out the case. We will have information from Mr. Nichols to provide us any additional details. The applicant will have a chance to respond to any questions or make a presentation. Following that, there will be time for public comment. We do have apparently some public here tonight, so when we do public comment, just a reminder as a courtesy, we try to keep comment time periods to within about 3 minutes or so that we have time for everybody to speak. Okay. First case is case number RZ-08-21-24, Madison Wood Preservers Incorporated, a rezoning application. Madison Wood Preservers has applied to rezone a roughly 3.71 acre parcel from R2 residential to M2 general industrial. The subject parcel is currently vacant land. If rezoned, the applicants intend to expand their receiving department. The parcel is identified on Madison County's tax maps as 39-95. All right, Mr. Nichols, anything to add there, please? Any additional?
The information for the rezoning application is essentially the same as we've had up until now, with the only new information available being the commentary that was submitted to each of you through email from one of the neighboring residents. So you all have copies of that, both in paper and you got it electronically. Other than that, the information is essentially the same.
Okay, does anyone have a question for Mr. Nichols on this so
Yeah, I do, I believe.
Yes, Mike.
So I know that in the past, we did this about 2 years ago, and I do believe this is a great place for this because it's in the 29 corridor and it's where it should be and all that. But a couple of years ago, we had a M1 that was trying to get out of an A1 that was backed up to a couple of R1s, or at least an R1. So being this is very similar to that, we had something that was being said by the property owner of the R1 that it was going to be devaluing his property if that got approved to the M1. I'd like to know if that's going to be the same case here.
In this case, the M2 district is existing, and so this would not be an example of spot zoning. This is simply an expanding of the existing district that is already adjacent to those properties.
Well, I figured it wasn't spot zoning, but I didn't know, is that going to be the only difference because it's not spot zoning?
I would
I mean,
say
do you
that
think
that
it's
is,
going to devalue those R1s that are already there?
I have to be careful which hat I'm wearing in this case. In the disclosure that I'm an appraiser, and I don't want to make the impression that I'm commenting in that regard. But as the zoning administrator and not an appraiser, I would say that because there is such expansive M2 zoning there now, that the addition of this small percentage of the overall zoning would have a negligible, if any, impact on the value of the neighboring properties.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Nichols? Okay, do we have a representative from the applicant here tonight? Okay. Yeah, if you would, just identify yourself, and we'll see if we have any questions.
My name is Carrie Gaviria, and I'm the president of Madison Wood.
I am Brad Knighting, Senior VP of Madison Wood.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? No questions. Well, I guess you get a free pass tonight. Thank you. Thanks. All right, at this point, we'll open for public comment on this application. If you would just wait a few moments for our Board of Supervisors member to get here. Okay, at this point, is there any public comment on this case? Yes, ma'am, if you would, or if you want, we can bring you the microphone either way. Okay. And again, if you would identify yourself and make your comments.
I'm Rhoda Johnston, and I guess I take it upon myself to speak on behalf of the residents of Maple Drive. We are very much concerned about this addition that they're wanting to do. Not that we're against it, but we do have some questions. Number one, are you going to be putting up an additional building?
Please address your comments to the
Oh, okay,
Planning
okay,
Commission.
I'm sorry, I thought she would answer.
And make these in the form of statements. This is a comment, not a
Okay,
question.
all right, well, we're concerned if there's going to be an additional building put up, and if it is, how far back on that property is it going to be put up? A second one is that bank that is right there on the corner. When we come out from Maple Drive, we cannot see past that bank down on 29. It is a very sore sight for us, and it's a very dangerous place for us. And then the third comment is, are they going to have to put an additional entrance and exit to that property? I'm hoping it does not come off of Oak Park Road, because already we are bombarded with those trucks that come in and go out, and the traffic. I myself had an accident at that intersection. I had a green light and I went through it. Somebody came barreling through on 29 and demolished my car. But it is a very dangerous intersection, so we don't know if when they get this rezoned and they start the additions, what they're going to do. Are they going to change that light at that intersection, or are we still going to have to deal with what we've got? I know there will be more traffic, and that's why we're concerned about having the entrance not on Oak Park Road, but on 29 if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further public comment on this case? All right, ordinarily, we wouldn't do this, but since that seems to be the only, you do have, okay, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Melinda Irwin, and I also live on Maple Drive, and I do have concerns. Right now, what we're experiencing, and I know that you want this in a question form, but I'm going to put it to you in logistics. We have a major problem with the trucks that are turning on to Oak Park. When they have a green light, they are swinging wide into where they are taking our lane. My question is, what are you going to do to stop this? How do you propose that this is no longer going to be a problem? The other issue is when your trucks are coming back from, let's say, the Charlottesville area, not only are they swinging wide, they're swinging into the opposite lane of traffic again. This is a major problem. And yes, it's been existing for a while, and we've dealt with it. But to add insult to injury, to throw this extra at us, we don't find the need that it go on Oak Park. Should it be VDOT that puts in some other type of lane? The light doesn't even manage the traffic that's sitting there now, much less the speed zone is supposed to be 55 through there. Let's face it, 55 is not the speed that goes through there unless they happen to see a cop sitting there. Then you might get 40 out of them. But that speed zone through there, and not just for their trucks, it's their trucks are not the problem at that particular point when they're stopped at the light. It's the rest of the traffic that's on 29 that is an issue. We just do ask that before any of this is passed, you consider the rest of the citizens out here that do also pay taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further public comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. My name is Sarah McCarley. I'm a resident at 120 Oak Park Road. This is my first board meeting, so I apologize if it doesn't come out politically correct. But I, as a property owner that is adjacent to this proposal, I'm very concerned about the value of my property and about the increasing traffic and the increasing noise. My family and I have lived at this residence for 10 years, and so the existing property always had traffic, which we kind of adapted to and got used to. But hearing the concerns of the citizens that are across the way from me, and considering how concerned they are, it makes me that much more concerned, considering I will be right up against this newly proposed development. Not understanding what that development is and how it's going to impact the already very busy roadway that residents are supposed to be living comfortably on, and having to listen to Jake brakes at 3 a.m. If it impacts my property more so than what it already has, that will be a very big concern for not only me, but for my neighbors who couldn't be here tonight. So I'd like to to mimic what the residents across the way said and make sure that it's taken into consideration before being approved. The least that they could do is provide us with additional information on what they plan to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further public comment? No further public comment. Okay, as I started to say earlier, ordinarily we wouldn't do this. Most of these concerns were addressed in the previous workshop meetings, but if the applicant would like to come up and maybe address a few of those, thank you. As I said, the majority of these questions actually have been before the Planning Commission already. I think perhaps with a little description of what you all plan to do and maybe address the issue about additional traffic, as they say, and go on from there, please. Thank you.
Of course. Well, I think you guys are going to be very happy. Number one, I know you're very concerned right now, but we do, can you hear me well? We do have your best interests at heart. I grew up in Maple Drive. I lived there for many years. I know what that's about. I know what the noise is. What we're trying to do is to make this better. So one of the really great things about Madison Wood is that we have a thriving culture and a thriving community. We support over 110 families locally that work for our operation. During the pandemic, they were worried about whether businesses would be essential or not essential. We were deemed essential. We actually, because of the way we handled ourselves in that time period, we grew our volume by 20%. Okay, that's what you're seeing now. The increase in traffic, the frustration around that, that's what you're seeing. And that's exactly what we're aiming to correct. So let me just answer the questions. I tried to write them down if that's helpful. So will there be additional buildings? Yes, there will be additional buildings. That's how we can get trucks in and out faster. At Madison Wood, we keep everything under roof. So it's really important that we have buildings to be able to unload trucks into so that we're not getting that product wet and selling our customers product that doesn't treat properly. The bank on 29, we also hate that bank. You are not alone. We are trying to work with VDOT, and we hope to work with VDOT to correct that bank. But ultimately, VDOT is in control of that. We don't have full say, okay? So all we can do is say we're willing to work with you and fix that. We know they hang when they turn. We'd love to see that get corrected. In our minds, that means we lose a big chunk of that 3.71 acres because we have to fix that curve, okay, and give them a spot to go. So I hope that answers the bank on 29. You have anything to say about that?
It's just that if everybody has noticed, there's a concrete pillar there that's getting ready to fall in the road. That's VDOT's right there. Everything to that concrete pillar is VDOT's. That's not ours. But we have been in contact with VDOT, and they actually want to do something to fix that. Now, what it is, we don't know, but we do want that fixed.
And that's going to be something that's a part of our site plan, but if this doesn't go forward, it's not something that we would just fix. The site plan would allow us to work with VDOT to be able to get that fixed. In terms of entrance and exits, all I can speak to you on behalf of Madison Wood as the president and senior VP and CFO and then owner, we have to present our site plan to the board, okay? And what gets approved is the board's decision, not necessarily ours. My, Brad's, and Bobby's site plan is one that does not include another entrance or exit. It will use the same entrance and exit that we currently have. Mind you, the 20% of increased volume is already here. That's what we're trying to fix. So from a standpoint of receiving and unloading trucks, it would take us anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes to unload a truck. We're hoping to reduce that by about 30%. Okay, so the goal is to get trucks in and out faster so they are longer, which means better emissions, which means less noise. So the whole goal of this is to get them in and out because the business is already there. For us to put another entrance off of Oak Park, it wouldn't make any sense. For us to put an entrance off of 29, the way that I see it, it wouldn't make any sense. Not to mention that might be a bigger problem for traffic on 29. I'm sorry to hear that you were in an accident. I hope it wasn't a truck. No. Okay. It was a pickup. One thing that, you know, can be really frustrating for us is when we get off on lunch break, all 100 of us get off on lunch break. So it can be a lot of traffic all at once. We'd love to see VDOT get creative and make something better there. All right, trucks turning onto Oak Park wide, I think we covered that. The speed limit on 29, I can't do anything about that. Cars going fast on 29 is not really us. I hope you don't see a trucker do anything illegal or dangerous. If you do, they're not our trucks. So what we recommend is that you look at the name on the side of the truck and you take down the license plate number and you report them. Or you call that, then call us and tell us which trucking company is doing it so we can report it on top of you.
We own no trucks. We own no drivers. Everything that all that lumber that comes in is coming from either a mill that we buy from, that they contract the truckers, okay? Or we hire a trucker to carry it out, but it's all independent. We own no trucks. So we can look into problems if we have problems with truckers.
And we certainly have before. We have had complaints before. We have followed that down. We've had drivers that aren't allowed back in our facility before.
Yes.
That's not unheard of. We're very strict about the safety of our employees, not just the residents of Madison. And it's really important to us that whoever enters or exits our facility is aware that we feel that way.
And a big part of what we're trying to do here is make it safe for our employees and make it safe for the community. That's what we're after here. And that's the reason why we're trying to get these trucks off of Oak Park and get them where there's room for them to stack up on us so we can get it unloaded quicker and get it out of there. So you're not listening to trucks. And we would like to be able, we have to extend our hours because of the volume of trucking and because of the volume of business. We're hoping to be able to unload quicker and load quicker with this expansion, and that's why.
And that means less hours, right? Less hours that we're doing receiving and shipping, which is important for you guys as residents. Now, you'll see this picture up here. I have terrible Photoshop skills. I am not good at this, and it's not to scale, okay? It's just to show you what we'd like to put up there. Building 6 doesn't even exist without Mr. Murray's property, and it's really not necessary for what we're trying to do. So currently, where Building 6 is stationed, Mr. Murray's house is right there, and that will not be a building. Oh, no, safe to say it's up there. So what we're trying to do, one of the big problems that we've had over the last 2 years, really, we have had such an increased volume of business from the pandemic that we have had trucks back all the way up to Oak Park, which we don't like at all. And it takes about 14 trucks in shipping to back all the way up. So we have designed a way to unload trucks and to load trucks where they will not back up to the road, at least as often. We'd have to be extremely busy for them to do that. What you don't see here is the secondary ship line that we will be able to hold carryover trucks. So the goal is actually to make it faster. The goal is to make it safer, not only for community members, but for our 110 employees.
Thank you very much, yes. If you would like, we'll continue public comment, but this is not a question and answer session. Thank you.
You know my number. You can call me. You know where I'm at.
It was my hope that once you heard some of what they had presented to us earlier, some of these questions would already be answered. But if you do have further public comment, feel free to come up. Anyone? Okay. All right, thank you then very much. While we're at it, is there anyone online that's? Okay, so, okay. All right. Okay, if there's no further public comment, do we have any discussion, comments, questions?
I'll just make a general comment.
Yes, sir.
In regards to the rezoning of this property, I don't really see anything that would prohibit me from moving forward with that. It is, very consistent with where it's at. As far as the site plan and everything to come, like with you guys, I have concerns about the traffic. Some of that's Madison Wood Preservers traffic, some of it's not, and I hope, between VDOT and the county working together, if everything does move forward, that they'll be able to get everything worked out in a positive way.
Okay, any other comment, discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I make
Yes,
a
sir.
motion that case number RZ-08-21-24 be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval.
Second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded twice. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. So case number RZ-08-21-24 will be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval. All right, our second case is case number SP-05-08-24, Yates Properties of Madison, LC, a site plan application. Yates Properties of Madison, LC, has filed a site plan application for property located at 4956 South Seminole Trail, Madison, Virginia, and further identified by tax map number 55-14. The site location is further described as being located on the west side of Route 29, Seminole Trail, just north of the intersection with Route 662, Shelby Road. The property contains a total of 10.684 acres and is zoned industrial, limited, or M1. The project, known as Self-Storage of Madison Addition, is proposing to construct a new 12,000 square foot self-storage building and travel aisles. Pursuant to Appendix 1 of zoning, Article 9-1-25, storage facilities are a by right use in the M1 zoning district. The total project site is 8.758 acres. A total of approximately 1.38 acres will be disturbed during construction. Okay, Mr. Nichols, anything to add there?
No, Mr. Chairman. The information is essentially the same as the last workshop, with the addition being that Mr. Yates provided a signed copy of the deed of easement as requested at the last workshop. And in your addendum to tonight's packet, I also included the approval from VDOT and the letter from DEQ. Other than that, all the information is the same.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions at this time for Mr. Nichols? Yes.
So Mr. Nichols, did I hear you say there was a signed easement, or it is not signed? Because the one I have is not
Yeah,
signed.
it's in.
If the copy you have is not signed, I have one for you to look at. It has the signature on it.
Okay, any other questions?
It's in the addendum.
Okay. Okay, as long as we got it, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
Do we have anything from VDH? Do we have an approval from them?
At this time, we do not have anything from VDH, no, sir.
Has it? Okay.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
My understanding is that the engineer is here tonight and could possibly give you an update.
Okay.
Kind of following up with Mike's question. It's my understanding that this is basically just a building expansion and parking and so forth. What would VDH be doing here? I mean, there's not a drain field for this building. There's not.
Yeah, actually, it is. It's a building that, so the one that's there, right, is gonna be demolished.
All right.
Because the new building's gonna be on top of it. So they've got to replace that one with the new one for Blue Ridge Auto Pros. Right, so Blue Ridge Auto Pros, their septic field is where the building's
Right,
gonna
right.
be. So they have to replace that with another one. So that's the issue here. So if the area where they have designated for the new septic field hasn't been approved yet, then we really don't have, I mean, I don't know if it's been approved or not. We don't have anything from BDH saying that they have approved it.
I guess my question is, that proposed drain field site is not for this applicant. Why would we expect him to get VDH approval?
Because Because it,
Because it's
It has
replaced,
to be for the applicant, because he's taking the people's drain field. They've
Okay.
gotta have a new drain field.
okay, I understand.
They can't put a new drain field in like something from BDH. And that's what this thing is signed for the guy to get a new drain field.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Nichols? All right, do we have any idea if a timeline for VDH response to this?
I cannot speak for VDH.
Yeah, nobody can, but. Okay,
But
so-
perhaps our applicant can.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Nichols?
okay, so.
Yes.
Did we, and this will be probably a question for Mr. Hinchy, is if they looked into any further, for that Bell Atlantic. I'll wait till Mr. Hinchy gets up here.
Okay, well, unless there's further questions for Mr. Nichols, let's move on to the applicant. And I assume you're representing tonight? And as always, identify yourself, please.
Mr. Chairman, Marvin Hinchy with Hinchy and Baines out of Culpeper. Greg Yates is out of town, couldn't make it tonight, so I'm standing in for him. I guess to answer one question about the Health Department application, they're due to get back to us October 9th or 10th. I can't remember which it is, but they have a certain deadline to respond to the application, and they usually respond at the deadline. I checked with the soils consultant, and he said that he was following up, but he could only push them so hard. But anyway, we should hear on that next week. I guess another question I think Mike was referring to was the easement. I did research at easement that was recorded in 1998. It's kind of interesting. It was for a cell tower back in 1998, which didn't get built. However, 4 years ago, there was one that was built in another location on that property. So that easement, even though it was recorded, there's nothing there, so it should be a non-issue. I guess any other questions?
Yeah, just one quick question. If I remember correctly from the last workshop, we were told that the proposed 12,000 square foot building actually is not planned to be that large. Is that correct?
That's
And
correct.
that it was also reoriented slightly?
Because of the issue with the drain field and there's a power line that is there that does cross the property, we had to twist it a little bit and we lost some square footage. So the best I could come up with was around 9,500 square feet. So it is a reduction from the original application.
Is that identified on a new packet? Do you know?
The current plan you have should have the correct square footage.
Mr. Schneider, if I may interrupt, on the screen it shows the 9,600 square foot proposal instead of the 12,000 square foot proposal.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, my question would be here, if we approve this and the people that's gonna get another easement for their drain field, and for some reason or another, that drain field don't pass, because we don't know if it will or not until VDH looks at it, then if this is approved, he could build his building and the guy not have a drain field.
Couldn't we do it pending VDH approval?
Yeah, I mean, you said you're expecting this within, 7 days? So,
I mean, the soil report looked good and all that, right? I mean, there was no
Right,
problems
right.
with that.
Yeah, and the site plan drawings that we have now are the most recent and they're the current ones? Yes, okay.
Correct.
So I've got a question for Mr. Wright, if that's okay, while Mr. Hinchy's up here. So say we have a signed copy by Mr. Yates, and the other person on the easement, Mr. and Mrs. Good, do not sign it for whatever particular reason, is that in the county's interest at all?
I don't think they have to sign it. I think their act of going to the clerk's office and recording it is the proof of their acceptance. So as it stands right now, this is basically an offer for them for the easement, saying, hey, we're willing to give it to you. And the acceptance is them going to that courthouse and recording it. So as of right now, it means something in the sense that they can record it, but I just looked on the remote access to land. At this point, they haven't recorded it, so that's where it sits right now. Does that make sense?
So if you were gonna make a recommendation, to approve this, would you have that in there, that is signed by the other party or not? Or just leave it as it is? So
It's a great question, because I'm also looking at our ordinance here for site plan ordinance at A6423. And the strange thing about this one is it's not for this property's drain field, it's for another property's drain field. If something meets the ordinance for a site plan, we really don't have a choice. It is approval, right? And it could be subject to VDH. We could say it doesn't have that. So A64.A.6.4.23, detailed plans for proposed water and sanitary sewer facilities meeting state and local requirements, pipe sizes, all that. It does require written confirmation of the health department's approval of location and type of proposed well, septic, or other proposed water and sanitary sewer facilities as part of the original site plan submission. So, what am I saying? We don't have VDH approval yet. That's sort of a separate issue from what I'm talking about. The issue of the drain field, let's say the Goods didn't agree with this or didn't want to do it. I think that is an issue between those parties, those adjacent property owners, and whether we approve this or not, that's still going to be an issue for them to deal with, where it's not necessarily a county site plan issue for this particular building as much as it's a problem between those two private property owners.
But if we approve this, Mr. Wright, we're in essence telling that guy, you can go ahead and build your bill and tear that guy's drain field out. It's his problem, your problem, whatever. We
Right.
don't have nothing to stand on that says to put this guy's drain field back.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to offer the Goods any legal advice. I'm sure that they could run to court and try to stop it.
it's almost, in other words, that the Goods, do they have the rights to keep their existing drain field because it is the way that it is existing now? Is that?
I have no idea.
Let me put it another way, but then, let's say that, hopefully we're just talking and spinning wheels here and we could go home soon, but if we approve it, the old drain field's removed, buildings over the new drain field, and let's say it doesn't work, is the county, because we're now impacting a business because they can't operate without a bathroom, I believe, what happens at that point? Do they come to the county?
I'm not going to be able to answer that like right off the cuff. I'm sorry.
Because we're essentially putting a business.
Yeah, let me ask Mr. Hinchy a question. You've had the soil scientist work on this, right? Has he provided a report?
Yes, he has.
All right,
Made a
can you give us
submission.
an idea of what his report says about that proposed drain field site?
Yes, he found a site that's approved for the same 300 gallons a day that the other one was approved for.
Okay.
I have
In
a- I was
your
gonna suggest-
experience,
I was going to suggest too that maybe, one thing would be to not issue a building permit for this until that drain field is built for the existing
Yeah.
building.
Well, the issue here, Steve, really isn't whether the drain field approved or not. The issue is, if you give him approval and he decides he don't wanna do that man's drain field, you don't have to.
Well, before we address Pete's question, in your experience, once the soil scientist has said this is a acceptable site, has the health department turned around and said, no, you can't do that before?
It's pretty much a done deal
Yeah.
these days with AOSEs leading the way on the work. And it's usually just kind of a filing procedure with the health department with their information, because they take on all the liability for the septic design.
Okay, so essentially, it looks like, is there any other problem with the site plan that anybody sees that we have a question about? I mean, we've addressed the easements and all this stuff and everything. So it's a question basically of if the Goods sign this and if, or when, they actually build a replacement drain field. So I guess the question becomes, who is responsible for building the replacement drain field?
I don't know if that's up to us, is it?
No.
Is the county?
But that seems to be what the question, that's the basis of the question that we're asking is, their business has to have that drain field to operate.
But it would be up to us if we put him out of business with his drain field, Mr.
Right.
Weekly's gonna go see him and say,
Right.
hey, you gotta have a drain field.
So at some point, that proposed drain field has to be installed before any further action is taken on the actual building. As you said, the building permit could be contingent on that.
Right. And I do know that Mr. Yates and Mr. Good have an agreement. And my understanding it's a 50-50 split on building the drain field. It was kind of odd situation. Mr. Yates sold the Goods, the property, and no one thought about where the drain field was. And so legally, Mr. Good does not have access to his own drain field. But Greg realizes that, and he's going to work with him. But it's odd that the lot was subdivided, created, and sold, and no one asked about the drain field. And that happened, I guess, 4 years ago, maybe, something like that.
So it looks like to me, if we could probably put this in there and just put the contingency that he can't have a building permit unless there is if there's not a drain field there for a backup for the Goods, then he can't get a building permit. Would that be
Right. I mean, we
acceptable?
can't start moving dirt
Well, I guess that's
until,
a legal
I mean,
question.
regardless of whether they have an easement, well, I mean, they could still have a drain field without the easement. But he's already, right? I mean,
Well, it sounds like the existing drain field was there without an easement. It was just.
well, it was, because
No,
it was all part of that
Well, it
property.
was-
That was,
It was,
It didn't need easement
because it was part of
our
the
property.
original property. And then they subdivided and,
it did a BLA.
yeah. Okay, one of those.
They did a BLA. of
Yeah.
If you
of
notice,
2 acres.
if you notice on the easement plat that's prepared, it covers the old drain field and the new one. So that and this is recorded, he will have right to keep using the old one until the new one is constructed.
One question for you, what was y'all's time frame? Do you have a deadline set for when you wanted to?
I'm afraid not.
He just basically wants this approved,
Right,
Right.
right.
and then
And-
think
and-
about it later.
And, it had something to do also with the VDOT project that's occurring right along its frontage. And he worked in agreement with them to share use of a stormwater pond. And while he was at it, he thought, well, I'll get the pond size to whatever my ultimate use of the property is going to be. So VDOT worked in agreement with them, and that enabled them not to build a new pond. They could just take his pond, enlarge it, to take care of their additional runoff and his future. So that's kind of what precipitated this project.
I notice we do have the memo from, about the soil and erosion, about the holding pond being approved, yeah.
It was approved by DEQ.
Yeah.
I'd like to recommend it for approval, but I don't know how to word it.
Sounds like we need to specifically, well, it wouldn't do any good to just say pending VDH approval, because that doesn't move
We
us
could do a
forward.
pending VDH approval and a co-signed easement agreement.
What right do we have to interfere with a private contract?
Right.
I mean, I've got a drain field from a neighboring house that's on my property. If I wanted to be an absolute prick, I could plant a weeping willow there.
Mhm.
And then it should be SOL. I'm not gonna do that. But I don't see how we can interfere with somebody's drain field that wasn't dealt with when the transaction was made to sell the property.
So, Mr.
I mean,
Wright,
I
if you
understand the
take his-
problem, it's a problem, there's no question about it, but it's our problem.
So, Mr. Wright, if you take his drain field away from him and just say, well, you know, this was the way the land got divided, we take his drain field away from him, and he don't have a drain field anymore, it's a court issue.
It could be, if he decides to go that way. I mean, the other part too that feels a little speculative about this is that, as far as I know, we haven't heard from the goods to sort of squawk or say, don't do this or don't approve it, or they've got concerns. So, you know, I don't know if it's a problem or not. But to the extent it is a problem, I think it's between those two property owners. You know, I mean, you do have the consideration of whether you're going to make it pending VDH approval or not, but that's not for this different drain field between properties issue.
Yeah, and pending a VDH approval is not that uncommon, because they are, like you said, they frequently come in at the last day. I guess the basic question here is, for us to consider a site plan, is this a appropriate question for us to be asking? Because as Jim said, this is, it's already something that these two individuals, different property owners, have been working on. And, you know, I don't see it's our role to take a stand on what they're dealing with.
Well, I agree with you to the extent that a site plan meets the ordinances. That's sort of the end of the inquiry, unfortunately, or for better or for worse. I mean, if we had something different in our site plan ordinance that required to address this issue, then it could, but we don't have it.
So despite the fact that we're aware this is a potential issue, it's not actually an issue affecting our consideration of the site plan itself.
Correct.
Just the building permit, probably.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, why couldn't we approve the case, if we're gonna approve the case, based on meeting our ordinance? Because the application act itself actually meets the ordinance.
Mhm.
It's the issues we got around it.
Okay, do you think it's worthwhile to include pending VDH, or just not go ahead and continue and include that?
Because I would say that written confirmation from VDH approving it is part of what's required for the site plan.
Mr. Wright, it was my understanding that the board ultimately had pretty much free reign on site plan requirements, like placement of requirements,
Wait.
special conditions.
So we've got our site plan ordinance of what it requires. Once somebody's meeting that, I think they've met the requirement. I'm open to being wrong about that.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that case number SP-05-08-24 meets our zoning requirements and needs VDH approval. Is that satisfactory?
Okay, recommending
You
approval.
recommend
since-
approval?
Yes.
I second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to recommend case number SP-05-08-24 for approval, since it meets our ordinance requirements and pending VDH approval. Does that sound? All right, any further discussion? All right. If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, no opposed. So we will be recommending case number SP-05-08-24 for approval by the Board of Supervisors pending VDH approval, since it does meet the ordinance requirements for site plan application. All right. I guess we skipped one important step here. Was there any public comment on this? Okay. Okay.
Mike Fisher from Virginia. The old site for years, Mr. Yates, and I'm not sure, I haven't been out there for a long time, had porta potties.
Mhm.
A lot of complaints from Mr. Dean, especially that lived right next door. I am not commenting on the old site, but the new site, can he still have porta potties? And would that be something that you should address for him? Because I think he's going to have more neighbors now than he did before. But regardless of that, I'm not sure that's a proper place to keep porta potties as in a storage. That smells up the place, but something to think about. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you addressed that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did address that earlier, that the porta potties that he allows there have to be empty, so,
I think he was moving them.
Yeah,
He wasn't
and-
gonna allow storage there anymore.
right. So I think he'd been addressing that. Okay, is there any public comment online? Still just Tracy? Okay, thanks. All right, we do have some upcoming items. Alan, would you give us a brief rundown on the upcoming items for the next PC workshop?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I did speak to Mr. Seek with Meander Inn earlier this week, and they've experienced a loss in the family, and he will not be available for the October meeting, and he has requested that we move his second workshop to the November meeting. And he has been actively reaching out to the neighbors to try to make contact and do the things that we asked him to do to make sure that everyone's on board. We're not, but he's letting them know his plans. So I intend to make contact with him again on or about the 1st of November.
Okay, thank you. So that will not be coming up on the October workshop then. Okay, and that appears to be the only one that was listed here for the upcoming workshop. All right. Again, once more, any other public comment? Any further discussion? If not,
Move to adjourn.
move to adjourn. Seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
You staying or going?
All right.
It's so entertaining.
Okay.
Okay, that's the way to be. I'd like to call to order the Board of Supervisors portion of the meeting. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. Anybody have anything we need to add to the agenda this evening? Anything?
No, sir,
We do have
Mr.
a
Chairman.
closed session, just pointing out, but it's on there.
And Mr. Nichols mentioned the addendums handed out tonight. He'll cover that in detail when you get to the appropriate case, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. What's the pleasure of the board on the agenda?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. As always, general public comment. Is there any general public comment? Yeah. All right, let's go into the hearings. Case number RZ-08-21-24, Madison Wood Preservers, Inc., rezone application. Madison Wood Preservers, Inc. has applied to rezone roughly 3.71 acre parcel from R2 residential to M2 general industrial. The subject parcel is currently vacant land. If rezoned, the applicant intends to expand their receiving department. The parcel is identified on Madison County's tax map as 39-95. Mr. Nichols, anything to add other than the addendum with the public comment in it?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Mr. Nichols?
No, sir.
No, sir.
To the applicant, anything to add? Anyone from MWP? Any questions for the applicant?
No, sir.
All right. To the public. To the public. All right. Back to the board. What would you all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case number RZ-08-21-24 as recommended by the Planning Commission.
I second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank y'all. Look forward to seeing the site plan. Case number SP-05-08-24, Yates Property of Madison LC, site plan application. Yates Property of Madison LC has filed a site plan application for property located at 4956 South Seminole Trail, Madison, Virginia, and further identified by tax map number 55-14. The site location is further, the site, good Lord. The site location is further described as being located on the west side of Route 29 Seminole Trail, just north of the intersection with Route 662 Shelby Road. The property contains a total of 10.684 acres and is zoned as Industrial Limited, M1. The property known as Self-Storage of Madison Addition is proposing to construct a new 12,000 square foot self-storage building and travel aisle. Pursuant to Appendix 1 zoning, Article 9-1-25, storage facilities are a by right use in M1 zoning district. The total project site area is 8.758 acres. The total of approximately 1.38 acres will be disturbed during construction. Mr. Nichols, anything to add other than the deed that you've attached in the addendum and the updated site map?
The only other items that I attached to the addendum were the letter from VDOT and DEQ. They're generally acceptable.
Very good. Questions for Mr. Nichols on this? Judd, please.
Just real quick, so did this go down to 9,600 square feet? Is that right?
Yeah.
That is correct.
How many storage units is that in that 9,600 square feet? Do we know?
I'm not sure how he's going to do that.
Just back to the Porta-Johns, I'm just wondering like how many do we need? And that's just for people showing up because there's nobody that's staying there. Or there's no worker there, so that's just people showing up, putting their stuff in storage and then using it.
No, the Porta-Johns are a different deal. I believe that Mr. Yates said there is a bathroom on premises, but it is not for public use or his customer use. The Porta-Johns that Mr. Fisher has spoken about in the back, and then other, yes, Mr. Dean, I remember him talking about that. Mr. Yates was charging whoever's Porta-Johns they were, I guess they were Coverages, is that right? No. Whose were they? There was somebody else's Porta-Johns. He was charging to store the things. They've always been, the assertion has been made in the past that they were dirty and they smelled. I've seen this come up a couple times, and they've always said they're cleaned Porta-Johns. They're just as solely just a storage thing. Okay. So they're not going to be used as they're not going to be used.
So there will be no Porta-Johns for public use?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. All right.
Is that right, Mr. Henchy?
That is correct.
I misunderstood. All right, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Nichols? All right, to the applicant. Mr. Henchy, you have anything to add?
No, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Henchy? All right, to the public. To the public. All right, back to the board. We do have a recommendation. It is contingent upon VDH approval. What would you all like to do?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case number SP-05-08-24, contingent upon the VDH approval and the easement getting recorded in the courthouse.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we don't have any new business. Do we have any information and correspondence?
We do not, Mr. Chairman.
All right, public comment. Public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Price.
Yes. Hearing none, we do have a closed session. Thank you all.
Yeah, I move that the board convene in a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A1 for personnel and 2.2-3711A7 for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation.
I'd second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.